Hello, everyone. I am Elena, and I want to ask you something right now, before we do anything else. Think about the last time you were next to someone interesting, maybe in a coffee shop or at a work event or at a party, and you wanted to say something, and you did not. What stopped you? Was it that you did not know what to say? Was it the fear of making a mistake? Was it the worry that your accent would give you away? Or that you would run out of things to say after 2 sentences and the silence would be unbearable? I know that feeling, and I want you to know that feeling is not about your English. It is about the gap between the English you have learned and the English that actually lives in real, everyday conversation. And today, we are going to close that gap completely. We are going to learn how native speakers actually start conversations, not the textbook version, the real version, the version that happens in coffee shops and office hallways and parties and everywhere else that real people actually connect. We are going to cover strangers, colleagues, social events, online messages, and what to do when a conversation does not go the way you hoped. And by the end of this lesson, you will have the exact phrases, the real dialogues, and the genuine confidence to start conversations in English the way native speakers do. Not perfectly, naturally. And there is a very important difference between those two things. If you are new here, welcome. I am so glad you found us. We publish a brand new English lesson every single day to help you speak with real confidence and connect with the world around you. Please subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss one. Now, take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and let's begin. Before we learn the phrases, I want to spend a few minutes understanding why starting conversations in English feels so uniquely and specifically difficult. Because once again, this is not a personal failing. It is not a sign that you are shy or socially awkward or lacking in personality. It is a very specific and very understandable challenge that has several clear causes. And understanding those causes will help you approach this lesson with exactly the right mindset. The first cause is what I call the perfection trap. Most English learners have been trained, through years of classroom learning, to believe that correct English is the goal, that every sentence should be grammatically accurate, that every word should be precisely chosen, that errors are failures. And this belief, however well-intentioned the teachers who instilled it, is absolutely devastating to natural conversation. Because natural conversation is not perfect. It is full of incomplete sentences and false starts and filler words, and laughter, and pauses, and all the beautiful imperfections of real human communication. When you are trying to be perfect, you cannot be natural. And when you cannot be natural, starting a conversation feels impossibly hard. Here is something I want you to hold on to. A false start, that moment when you begin a sentence and then stop and restart it, is not a mistake. It is what real spoken English sounds like. Native speakers do it constantly, and it makes their speech feel warm and alive, not broken. The second cause is the audience problem. In a classroom, when you speak English, you have an audience. A teacher who is evaluating you, classmates who are listening, a sense that your English is being judged and measured. And that feeling of being watched and evaluated creates enormous anxiety that simply does not exist in most real conversations. Because in real conversations, the other person is not evaluating your English. They are simply another human being who wants to connect. And the moment you truly internalize that truth, everything becomes less frightening. The third cause is the script problem. When you learned English, you probably learned scripts, formal scripts for specific situations, how to introduce yourself, how to ask for directions, how to order food. These scripts are useful in the specific situations they were designed for. But real conversations do not follow scripts. They wander and meander and surprise you. And when you are relying on a script and the conversation goes somewhere unexpected, you freeze because the script cannot help you anymore. What you need instead is not more scripts, but a different way of thinking about conversation entirely. And that is exactly what this lesson will give you. The fourth cause is what I call the cultural gap. How people start conversations varies enormously from culture to culture. In some cultures, speaking to a stranger is unusual and even slightly inappropriate. In Japan, for example, striking up a conversation with someone you do not know on public transport would feel unusual to most people. But in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia, it is completely normal, even expected, to exchange a few friendly words with the person standing next to you in a line or sitting beside you at a cafe. Neither approach is right or wrong. They are simply different. And understanding that these cultural norms are different, rather than judging them, helps you adapt to them far more comfortably when you are in an English-speaking environment. The good news is that once you understand these four causes, you can address them directly. And that is exactly what this lesson is designed to do. Here is something that might genuinely surprise you. When a native speaker starts a conversation with a stranger, they are almost never thinking about the language. They are thinking about one thing and one thing only: a reason to connect. That reason might be something in their shared environment: a long line, a beautiful day, a funny sign, a book one of them is reading, a delay on the train. It might be a genuine question they need answered. It might be a compliment they genuinely want to give. It might be simply the feeling that the other person seems interesting and that life is short and that connection is worth reaching for. The language comes second, always. The desire to connect comes first. And when you approach conversation that way, from the desire to connect, rather than from the performance of correct English, everything shifts. You stop thinking about what you are saying and start thinking about who you are saying it to. And that shift is the beginning of natural conversation. The most common and most universal opportunity for starting a conversation in English is in everyday situations with strangers. In coffee shops and lines and parks and public transport, and anywhere else that human beings share space with each other. And native speakers have a very specific and very consistent way of opening these conversations. The single most important thing to understand is this: they almost always begin with something that both people can already see or are experiencing or are reacting to together. Something that is simply already there in the world around them. This shared reference point creates immediate common ground. It makes the conversation feel natural and contextually appropriate, rather than random or intrusive. And it takes all the pressure off you to think of something original or clever to say. You simply notice what is already there, and you comment on it. Now let's practice these phrases together. I will say each one slowly first, and then again at natural speed with the contractions native speakers actually use. Listen carefully to the rhythm as much as the words, because the rhythm is part of the language. Excuse me, is anyone sitting here? I would love to sit down if this seat is free. Listen again. Excuse me, is anyone sitting here? I'd love to sit down if this seat is free. This line is moving really slowly, isn't it? I hope we are not here all day. Now at normal speed. This line is moving really slowly, isn't it? I hope we're not here all day. Notice that little question at the end, isn't it? This is called a tag question, and it is one of the most important conversation tools in English. A tag question does not really ask for information. It opens a door. It says, I am not demanding you talk to me. I am simply making space for connection. If the other person wants to walk through that door, they will. I love your bag. Can I ask where you got it? I have been looking for something exactly like that. Let's try it at a natural pace. I love your bag. Can I ask where you got it? I've been looking for something exactly like that. Notice the structure of this phrase. It begins with a genuine compliment, then immediately asks a question, and then gives a personal reason. Compliment, question, personal reason. This three-part structure is extraordinarily powerful because it shows the other person that your interest is real. You are not just flattering them. You actually have a reason, and that reason makes the compliment feel true. Is that a good book? I keep seeing it everywhere, and I have been wondering whether to read it. Once more naturally. Is that a good book? I keep seeing it everywhere, and I've been wondering whether to read it. The weather has been absolutely incredible this week, hasn't it? I feel like a completely different person when the sun comes out. Now with the contraction. The weather's been absolutely incredible this week, hasn't it? I feel like a completely different person when the sun comes out. I want to say something about weather as a conversation topic, because many learners from other cultures find it slightly strange that English speakers talk about the weather so much. But here is what is really happening when someone says, "Beautiful day today, isn't it?" They are not talking about meteorology. They are offering you something neutral and safe to agree on. Agreement creates warmth. Warmth creates connection. It is one of the most socially sophisticated things in the English conversational toolkit, dressed up to look like small talk. Do you happen to know what time they close? I can never remember, and I did not want to check my phone. And now how a native speaker says it. Do you happen to know what time they close? I can never remember, and I didn't want to check my phone. Notice the phrase, "Do you happen to know?" This is softer and more polite than simply asking, "Do you know?" The word happen signals, I realize this is a random question. I am not demanding anything from you. This kind of softening language appears constantly in English when native speakers ask strangers for something, and learning to use it will make your English sound immediately more natural and considerate. I cannot decide between these two. What would you choose? I feel like I have been standing here for 10 minutes. Let's hear it at normal speed. I can't decide between these two. What would you choose? I feel like I've been standing here for 10 minutes. That smells absolutely amazing. Do you know what it is? I have to find out. Once more naturally. That smells absolutely amazing. Do you know what it is? I have to find out. One of the most natural and effective ways native speakers start conversations is with a simple observation about something in their shared environment. Not a question, not a compliment, just an honest and often slightly humorous observation about what is happening around them. This type of opener works beautifully because it does not require any response from the other person. It simply opens a door. And if the other person wants to walk through it, they will. You will notice that many of these observations carry a gentle humor, a kind of light self-deprecation, making a small joke at your own expense or about a shared frustration. This is one of the most beloved social tools in British and American English. It says, "I do not take myself too seriously. You can relax around me." And that feeling of ease is what invites people in. They really packed this train today, didn't they? I feel like a sardine in here. Now at normal speed. They really packed this train today, didn't they? I feel like a sardine in here. I have been coming to this coffee shop for 2 years, and I still cannot make up my mind in under 5 minutes. Every single time. Let's try it with the natural contraction. I've been coming to this coffee shop for 2 years, and I still can't make up my mind in under 5 minutes. Every single time. Notice the grammar in that phrase. I have been coming. This is the present perfect continuous tense, and it describes something that started in the past and is still happening now. It makes the speaker sound like a regular, someone with a history in this place, which is a small and natural way of establishing personality and context in just a few words. I feel like I have been waiting for this bus for approximately 100 years. Once more naturally. I feel like I've been waiting for this bus for approximately 100 years. This park is so beautiful today. I almost feel guilty that I am going to have to go back to work in an hour. Now at a conversational pace. This park is so beautiful today. I almost feel guilty that I'm going to have to go back to work in an hour. I love how everyone in this city acts like 60 degrees is summer. People are out in shorts and everything. Let's hear it how a native speaker says it. I love how everyone in the city acts like 60 degrees is summer. People are out in shorts and everything. That phrase, "and everything," at the end, is a wonderful piece of informal English. It means, "and all of that kind of thing." It adds a casual, unfinished quality to speech, as if the speaker is still reacting to what they are describing in real time. You will hear it constantly in American English, and it is a beautiful, small signal of fluency. Now let's hear a complete and natural conversation between two strangers who meet in an everyday situation. Notice how the conversation starts with something in the shared environment. Notice how it develops naturally from there. And notice how simple and unscripted the whole thing feels. You are sitting in a coffee shop, waiting for your order. The person next to you is reading a book you recognize. You smile and say, "I am sorry to interrupt, but is that the one everyone has been talking about? I keep seeing it in bookstore windows and I have been wondering whether to start it." The person looks up and smiles back. Yes, it is. And honestly, it is even better than the reviews suggested. I started it 2 days ago and I am already almost finished. You say, "That is a really good sign. I always judge a book by how quickly it disappears. Are you a big reader, or did this one just catch you?" The person says, "I try to read a lot. I find it is the only thing that properly switches my brain off at the end of the day. What about you? Do you read much?" You say, "I go through phases. Sometimes I read everything I can get my hands on, and then I go weeks without picking up a book at all. But you have just convinced me this one is worth starting. I am going to get it on my way home." The person laughs warmly and says, "I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. I would hate to have given you a bad recommendation on such a short acquaintance." You laugh too and say, "You seem like a trustworthy person to me. I will take the risk. Now let's shadow the key lines together. Slowly first, and then at natural speed. I am sorry to interrupt, but is that the one everyone has been talking about? I keep seeing it in bookstore windows and I have been wondering whether to start it. Now at normal speed. I'm sorry to interrupt, but is that the one everyone's been talking about? I keep seeing it in bookstore windows and I've been wondering whether to start it. That is a really good sign. I always judge a book by how quickly it disappears. Are you a big reader, or did this one just catch you? Once more naturally. That's a really good sign. I always judge a book by how quickly it disappears. Are you a big reader, or did this one just catch you? I go through phases. Sometimes I read everything I can get my hands on, and then I go weeks without picking up a book at all. But you have just convinced me this one is worth starting. I am going to get it on my way home. Let's try it at a conversational pace. I go through phases. Sometimes I read everything I can get my hands on, and then I go weeks without picking up a book at all. But you've just convinced me this one is worth starting. I'm going to get it on my way home. You seem like a trustworthy person to me. I will take the risk. Now with the natural rhythm. You seem like a trustworthy person to me. I'll take the risk. Shadow this entire conversation slowly, and then at natural speed. Notice how the conversation started with a simple observation about something in the shared environment. Notice how naturally it moved from the book to reading habits to a warm and slightly playful exchange between two people who were complete strangers 2 minutes ago. Notice also the phrase, "I'm sorry to interrupt." This is a small act of social grace. It acknowledges that you are entering someone else's space, and it gives the other person a moment to prepare to receive you. Native speakers use phrases like this constantly, and learning to use them will make your English feel immediately more considerate and natural. That is what starting a conversation actually looks like. And now I want to add something that most English lessons leave out entirely. What do you do when the conversation does not go as planned? What do you say when the other person is distracted, or in a hurry, or simply not in the mood to talk? This happens to everyone, including native speakers. And it is not failure. It is simply life. Native speakers have very specific phrases for exactly this moment. No worries. Have a great day. Sorry to bother you. That is okay. I will figure it out. Thanks anyway. Don't worry about it. Enjoy your book. These phrases do something important. They remove the awkwardness immediately, and they leave the other person feeling good about the interaction, even though it did not develop into a conversation. And here is something beautiful about that. Even a conversation that goes nowhere leaves an impression. If you exit gracefully and warmly, the other person remembers you as someone pleasant and self-assured, someone who tried and was not diminished by the outcome. That is the kind of person people want to talk to. A graceful exit is its own form of social skill, and knowing you have one available makes it far easier to take the risk of starting a conversation in the first place. Take a quick breath here. Roll your shoulders back and let the tension go. You are doing wonderfully. Now, before we move to the workplace, I want you to pause for just a moment and complete this sentence honestly, either in your mind or out loud in English. The situation where I find it hardest to start a conversation in English is... Hold that answer, because we are about to give you the exact words for it. The workplace is one of the most important and most consistently challenging environments for starting conversations in English. Because at work, conversations are not just social. They have stakes. They affect how you are perceived professionally. They influence your relationships with colleagues and managers. They can open doors to opportunities or close them. And the pressure of all of that can make even the simplest conversation feel like a high-stakes performance. But here is what I want you to understand about professional conversations in English. The most successful professionals are not the ones with the most impressive vocabulary or the most perfect grammar. They are the ones who make other people feel comfortable, valued, and heard. And that has very little to do with the words themselves, and everything to do with the warmth and genuine interest with which those words are delivered. How is your morning going so far? I feel like today is going to be one of those days. Now at normal speed. How's your morning going so far? I feel like today's going to be one of those days. I want to draw your attention to a beautiful little expression in that phrase. One of those days. This is what we call a fixed expression in English. You do not need to explain what those days means. Every English speaker understands it immediately as a day when things go wrong or feel exhausting. Fixed expressions like this are incredibly useful because they carry meaning without requiring any grammatical work. You simply learn them as complete units and use them exactly as they are. I have been meaning to ask you about the project you have been working on. I heard it is going really well. Let's try it at a natural pace. I've been meaning to ask you about the project you've been working on. I heard it's going really well. The phrase, "I've been meaning to ask you," is one of the warmest ways to open a conversation at work, because it tells the other person, "You have been on my mind. I have been thinking about you." That feeling of being thought about is one of the most powerful things you can give another person. And this simple phrase delivers it effortlessly. Did you manage to get to the bottom of that issue we were talking about last week? I was curious how it turned out. Once more naturally. Did you manage to get to the bottom of that issue we were talking about last week? I was curious how it turned out. Get to the bottom of something is an idiomatic expression that means to find the cause or solution of a problem. Learning expressions like this and using them naturally in context is one of the fastest ways to sound genuinely fluent rather than just grammatically correct. Other useful expressions in professional English include get the ball rolling, which means to start something. On the same page, which means in agreement, and touch base, which means to make brief contact with someone. I saw your presentation this morning. I thought the way you handled the questions at the end was really impressive. Now with the natural rhythm. I saw your presentation this morning. I thought the way you handled the questions at the end was really impressive. Are you heading to the team lunch today? I was thinking of going, but I am not sure yet. Let's hear it at normal speed. Are you heading to the team lunch today? I was thinking of going, but I'm not sure yet. I do not think we have officially met yet. I am Elena. I joined the team about 3 weeks ago, and I feel like I am still meeting everyone. Now at a conversational pace. I don't think we've officially met yet. I'm Elena. I joined the team about 3 weeks ago, and I feel like I'm still meeting everyone. Notice how this introduction works. The phrase, I feel like I'm still meeting everyone, is honest and slightly vulnerable. It signals that you are new and still finding your way. And that vulnerability is actually a gift to the other person because it gives them a role. They can help you. They can be the one who is already established, who can welcome you in. Vulnerability in a professional introduction is not weakness. It is one of the most effective ways to create warmth quickly. I really liked the point you made in the meeting this morning. I had been thinking something similar, but you said it much better than I would have. Once more naturally. I really liked the point you made in the meeting this morning. I'd been thinking something similar, but you said it much better than I would have. Starting a conversation with someone more senior than you adds an additional layer of complexity. There is a power dynamic to navigate, a level of formality to calibrate, and the fear of appearing to waste someone important's time. But here is what I want you to notice about the phrases I am going to teach you now. They all use what we call permission-seeking language. Phrases like, if you have a moment, when you have time, if you are open to it. This kind of language is not weakness. In professional English, giving senior people a graceful way to say, not right now, shows emotional intelligence. It signals that you respect their time. And paradoxically, it makes people far more likely to engage with you, not less. I hope I am not catching you at a bad time. I just had a quick question about the project if you have a moment. Now at normal speed. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I just had a quick question about the project if you have a moment. I have been thinking about something you said in the meeting last week, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it in a bit more depth. When you have time. Let's try it at a natural pace. I've been thinking about something you said in the meeting last week, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in a bit more depth. When you have time. I wanted to update you on where things stand with the project. Do you have 5 minutes sometime today? Once more, naturally. I wanted to update you on where things stand with the project. Do you have 5 minutes sometime today? I read the report you shared yesterday and I found it really useful. Thank you for putting that together. Now at a conversational pace. I read the report you shared yesterday and I found it really useful. Thank you for putting that together. I would really value your perspective on something I am working through. If you are open to it, I think your experience in this area would be incredibly helpful. Let's hear it how a native speaker says it. I'd really value your perspective on something I'm working through. If you're open to it, I think your experience in this area would be incredibly helpful. Now let's hear a complete and natural workplace conversation. One colleague approaching another they do not know very well, and turning a brief corridor moment into the beginning of a genuine professional relationship. You pass a colleague in the office kitchen. You have seen them in meetings, but never properly spoken. You smile and say, I do not think we have properly met yet. I am Elena from the product team. I have seen you in the Thursday meetings, but we have never actually had a chance to talk. Your colleague smiles warmly and says, I know. I was thinking the same thing the other day. I am James from the data team. I have actually been meaning to reach out because I think there might be some overlap in what we are both working on. You say, that is really interesting. What are you working on at the moment? I would love to hear more. James says, we are building out a new reporting framework for the customer data, but I think we are probably missing some context about how the product team actually uses that data day to day, which is where you might be able to help. You say, absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts about that actually. We should find time to sit down properly. Would you be open to a coffee sometime this week? James says, I would love that. Let me send you a calendar invite. I think this could be a really useful conversation. You smile and say, I think so too. I am glad we finally actually spoke. Now shadow the key lines at natural speed. I don't think we've properly met yet. I'm Elena from the product team. I've seen you in the Thursday meetings, but we've never actually had a chance to talk. That's really interesting. What are you working on at the moment? I'd love to hear more. Absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts about that actually. We should find time to sit down properly. Would you be open to a coffee sometime this week? I think so too. I'm glad we finally actually spoke. Shadow this entire conversation. Notice how the conversation began with a simple and warm self-introduction. Notice how genuine curiosity about the other person's work created immediate common ground. And notice how naturally a casual corridor moment became the beginning of a real professional collaboration. A 90-second conversation in a kitchen. That is all it takes. When you have the right words and the genuine interest to use them. You have covered so much ground already. Give yourself a quick 10-second reset. Take a sip of water, shake out your hands, and let's move to the next challenge. Social events are perhaps the most universally dreaded conversation-starting environment for English learners. And honestly, for many native speakers too. Because at a party or a social gathering, the conversations are not anchored by work or tasks or shared projects. They are purely social. And that means there is no obvious reason to talk to any particular person, and no obvious thing to talk about, and no safety net of professional context to fall back on. But native speakers have developed a very specific and very effective set of strategies for exactly this situation. And once you know what those strategies are, the party stops feeling like a minefield and starts feeling like an opportunity. Native speakers rely on 3 types of conversation starters at social events. The first is the host connection. How do you know the host? This question immediately creates common ground and gives both people something to talk about, and often reveals surprising and interesting connections. The second is the honest observation, something real and slightly self-deprecating about being at the party, about the food, about the venue, about anything shared and observable. And the third is the genuine compliment, followed immediately by a question. Not just, you look great, but you look great, and I love that color on you. Where did you find that? The follow-up question is everything. It is what transforms a compliment into a conversation. Let's practice all 3. How do you know Sarah? I am trying to work out how everyone fits together this evening. Now at normal speed. How do you know Sarah? I'm trying to work out how everyone fits together this evening. Work out here means figure out or understand. It is an extremely common phrasal verb in both British and American English. A phrasal verb is a verb combined with a preposition or adverb that creates a new meaning. Work out, figure out, turn out, find out. These are all phrasal verbs that appear constantly in everyday English. Learning them as complete units rather than trying to build them word by word is the fastest route to using them naturally. I have to be honest, I always find the first 10 minutes of parties slightly terrifying. Does everyone else feel that, or is it just me? Let's try it at a natural pace. I have to be honest, I always find the first 10 minutes of parties slightly terrifying. Does everyone else feel that, or is it just me? The phrase, I have to be honest, signals vulnerability. And vulnerability, when it is genuine, creates instant connection. When you name something slightly awkward or imperfect about yourself or your situation, other people almost always respond with recognition. Oh, me too. That shared recognition is the foundation of rapport. This is why self-deprecating honesty is one of the most socially sophisticated tools in the English speaker's toolkit. It looks like weakness from the outside, but it functions like a magnet. I love your shoes. I have been admiring them from across the room. Where are they from? Once more naturally. I love your shoes. I've been admiring them from across the room. Where are they from? Are you from here originally? Or did you end up in the city the same way everyone else seems to? Following someone or following a job. Now with the natural rhythm. Are you from here originally? Or did you end up in the city the same way everyone else seems to? Following someone or following a job. I want to draw your attention to something beautiful about this question. It offers two possible answers: following someone or following a job. This is called an alternative question, and it is extraordinarily useful in conversation because it makes the question very easy to answer. The other person does not have to think of something from scratch. They simply choose from the options you have given them. And both options lead naturally into a story, which is exactly what you want. This is my first time at one of these events. I was slightly terrified to come alone, but I told myself I would regret it if I did not. How long have you been coming? Let's hear it at normal speed. This is my first time at one of these events. I was slightly terrified to come alone, but I told myself I'd regret it if I didn't. How long have you been coming? What is that you are drinking? It looks incredible. I need to find out what it is before I commit to the wrong thing. Now at a conversational pace. What's that you're drinking? It looks incredible. I need to find out what it is before I commit to the wrong thing. I have been standing near this food table for about 15 minutes now, and I think I need someone to talk me out of trying everything on it. Once more naturally. I've been standing near this food table for about 15 minutes now, and I think I need someone to talk me out of trying everything on it. I recognized your laugh from across the room. I hope that is not a strange thing to say. It is just a really great laugh. Let's try it at a natural pace. I recognized your laugh from across the room. I hope that's not a strange thing to say. It's just a really great laugh. The phrase, I hope that's not a strange thing to say, is a masterclass in social awareness. When you say something unexpected or slightly unusual, acknowledging it immediately removes any potential awkwardness. It says, I know this is a bit out of the ordinary, and I am aware of that. That self-awareness is actually disarming and charming. It turns what could have been an odd moment into something warm and memorable. Now let's hear a full conversation between two people at a social gathering. One of them uses the exact strategies we have just practiced. Notice how natural and warm the whole exchange feels. You are standing near the drinks table at a party, feeling the slight awkwardness of being alone for a moment. Someone approaches and says, with a warm smile, "I have to say, I always head straight for the drinks table at parties. It gives you something to do with your hands while you work up the courage to talk to people. Is that just me, or is that a universal thing?" You laugh immediately because it is exactly what you were doing, and you say, "That is 100% a universal thing. I have been standing here for about 5 minutes telling myself I am just deciding what to drink." They laugh too and say, "Exactly. I am James, by the way. How do you know Tom?" You say, "We went to college together. He was in the year above me, but we ended up on the same sports team and became friends through that. What about you?" James says, "Work, actually. We have been colleagues for about 3 years. He is one of those people who manages to stay friends with everyone he has ever met, which I completely admire." You say, "That is such a perfect description of him. He is like a human connector. He always knows exactly the right person to introduce you to." James smiles and says, "Speaking of which, he told me there would be some interesting people here tonight. I think you might be the first one I have found." You smile and say, "I think that might be the nicest thing anyone has said to me at a party. I am Elena, by the way. I should probably have said that first." Now shadow the key lines at natural speed. "I have to say, I always head straight for the drinks table at parties. It gives you something to do with your hands while you work up the courage to talk to people. Is that just me, or is that a universal thing?" That's 100% a universal thing. I've been standing here for about 5 minutes telling myself I'm just deciding what to drink. We went to college together. He was in the year above me, but we ended up on the same sports team and became friends through that. What about you? That is such a perfect description of him. He's like a human connector. He always knows exactly the right person to introduce you to. I think that might be the nicest thing anyone has said to me at a party. I'm Elena, by the way. I should probably have said that first. Shadow this entire conversation slowly, and then at natural speed. Notice how the first line was honest and self-deprecating, and immediately created a sense of shared experience. Notice how the conversation moved naturally from the shared situation to how they knew the host, to a warm and genuine exchange about a mutual friend. Notice also that James introduced himself with, "I am James, by the way." That phrase, "by the way," softens the introduction slightly. It makes it feel like a natural addition to the conversation rather than a formal announcement. And notice how Elena introduced herself at the very end, not at the beginning. In relaxed social English, the introduction does not always come first. It comes when it feels right, when the conversation has already started and there is warmth between you. Forcing an introduction too early can actually feel more awkward than letting it arrive naturally. So if you are ever at a party and you find yourself deep in a conversation before you have said your name, do not panic. Just wait for a natural moment and say, "I am Elena, by the way. I should probably have said that first." And it will feel perfectly warm and human, exactly as it did in our dialogue. That is what a real party conversation sounds like. In the modern world, a huge amount of English conversation happens in writing. in professional emails and LinkedIn messages and online communities and social media comments and text messages. And starting a written conversation has its own specific challenges and its own specific skills. The biggest challenge with written conversation starters is that you cannot rely on tone of voice or facial expressions or body language to communicate warmth and genuine interest. All of that has to come through in the words themselves. And that makes word choice much more important than it is in spoken conversation. The single most important skill in written conversation starters is specificity. The more specific and genuine your opening message is, the more likely it is to get a response. Let me show you what I mean. A generic message might say, "Hi, I came across your profile and I would love to connect. I think we have similar interests." A specific message says, "I read your article about remote work culture last Tuesday, and it completely changed how I was thinking about meeting structures. I wanted to reach out and say thank you for writing it." Do you see the difference? The second message is specific. It is true, it is generous, it gives before it asks, and it tells the other person immediately that you actually engaged with their work. That specificity is the proof of genuine interest. And genuine interest is the only thing that reliably gets a response. "I came across your work recently and I genuinely found it fascinating. I would love to connect and hear more about your thinking on it." Now, reading it naturally, "I came across your work recently and I genuinely found it fascinating. I'd love to connect and hear more about your thinking on it. I read your article about this topic and it completely changed how I was thinking about it. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you for writing it." Let's hear the natural flow. "I read your article about this topic and it completely changed how I was thinking about it. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you for writing it." We have a few mutual connections, and I have heard your name come up several times in conversations about this field. I thought it was time to introduce myself properly. Once more, naturally. We have a few mutual connections, and I've heard your name come up several times in conversations about this field. I thought it was time to introduce myself properly. Notice the phrase, "introduce myself properly." The word properly implies that there is already some kind of connection, that you are not a complete stranger, even if you have never spoken. This positions your message not as a cold approach, but as the natural next step of a relationship that already has some warmth behind it. "I saw your comment in the group discussion yesterday, and I found myself nodding along to everything you said. I would love to continue that conversation if you are open to it." Now, at a conversational pace. "I saw your comment in the group discussion yesterday, and I found myself nodding along to everything you said. I'd love to continue that conversation if you're open to it. I have been following your work for a while, and I recently had an experience that made me think of something you wrote about 6 months ago. Would you be open to a quick conversation about it?" Let's try it at normal speed. "I've been following your work for a while, and I recently had an experience that made me think of something you wrote about 6 months ago. Would you be open to a quick conversation about it? I just saw your post and I had to comment because this is something I have been thinking about a lot lately too." Once more, naturally. "I just saw your post and I had to comment because this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately too." Notice the phrase, "I had to comment." Compare it to, "I wanted to comment." Wanted is mild interest. Had to is urgency. I had to comment means I could not stop myself. This resonated with me so strongly that I was compelled to respond. That small word change communicates real enthusiasm and makes the other person feel that their words had genuine impact. I have been reading through the comments on this thread, and your perspective stood out to me. I would love to hear more about your experience with this. Now, with a natural rhythm. I've been reading through the comments on this thread, and your perspective stood out to me. I'd love to hear more about your experience with this. I think we have a few things in common based on your profile. I hope it is okay to reach out. I would love to connect with people who are thinking about the same things I am. Let's hear it naturally. I think we have a few things in common based on your profile. I hope it's okay to reach out. I'd love to connect with people who are thinking about the same things I am. That photo you posted last week has been on my mind ever since. There is something about the composition that I find genuinely beautiful. Where was that taken? Once more naturally. That photo you posted last week has been on my mind ever since. There's something about the composition that I find genuinely beautiful. Where was that taken? I want to say something important about written English before we move on, because it is something that trips up even very advanced learners. In written English, especially in professional or semi-professional contexts, the way you end a message is just as important as the way you begin it. A message that opens warmly but closes abruptly can undo all the good work of the opening. Here are some natural ways native speakers close a first written conversation. I would love to hear your thoughts if you ever have a moment. No pressure at all. Or, feel free to ignore this if it is not the right time. I just wanted to reach out. Or, I hope this finds you well and that we get to connect sometime. These closings do something subtle but important. They give the other person complete permission not to respond. And paradoxically, that permission is exactly what makes people want to respond. When you remove the pressure, you create the space for genuine connection. And that principle, removing pressure, giving space, trusting the other person to come toward you, is true not just in written English, but in every conversation we have practiced today. Starting a conversation is only the first step. What happens in the moments immediately after the opening is equally important. Because many English learners find that they can manage the first line, but then the conversation stalls, and the silence arrives, and the confidence that got them through the opening suddenly disappears. The secret to keeping a conversation going is something that has nothing to do with vocabulary or grammar. It is genuine curiosity. When you are genuinely interested in the person you are talking to, the conversation takes care of itself. Questions arise naturally. Follow-ups emerge organically. You stop thinking about what to say next and start listening to what the other person is actually saying. But there are also specific techniques that native speakers use to keep conversations moving and to create the feeling of warmth and genuine connection that makes a conversation feel like more than just an exchange of information. The single most powerful conversational tool after the opening is the follow-up question. A follow-up question is a question that responds directly to something the other person has just said, rather than changing the subject or returning to a prepared question. It signals that you were genuinely listening, that what they said mattered to you, and that you want to know more. You will notice that the most powerful follow-up questions tend to ask about reasons, process, or feeling. What made you? How did you? What was that like? These are what we call open questions, questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. They require thought and personal sharing. And that sharing is where real connection lives. That is really interesting. What made you decide to go in that direction? Now, at normal speed. That's really interesting. What made you decide to go in that direction? I have never heard anyone describe it that way before. Can you say more about what you mean? Let's try it at a conversational pace. I've never heard anyone describe it that way before. Can you say more about what you mean? How long have you been doing that? I imagine it takes a long time to get to that level. Once more naturally. How long have you been doing that? I imagine it takes a long time to get to that level. What was that like? I cannot imagine being in that situation. How did you handle it? Now with the natural rhythm. What was that like? I can't imagine being in that situation. How did you handle it? And how did that turn out? I feel like you have left me on a cliffhanger. Let's hear it at normal speed. And how did that turn out? I feel like you've left me on a cliffhanger. A cliffhanger is a wonderful expression borrowed from storytelling. It describes an ending that leaves you desperate to know what happens next. When you tell someone, I feel like you've left me on a cliffhanger, you are giving them one of the highest compliments a conversationalist can receive. You are saying, your story was so compelling that I am completely absorbed, and it feels completely natural and spontaneous, which is the mark of truly fluent English. That is such a good point. I had not thought about it from that angle before. What led you to that conclusion? Once more, naturally. That's such a good point. I hadn't thought about it from that angle before. What led you to that conclusion? Now I want to say something about silence. Because silence is the thing that frightens English learners more than almost anything else in a conversation. That moment when both people stop talking and the air between you feels suddenly very loud, and the instinct is to panic, to say something, anything, just to fill the space. But here's what I want you to understand about silence in English conversation. A brief pause is not a failure. It is a sign that both people are actually thinking. Native speakers pause all the time, and a comfortable pause between two people is actually a sign of connection, not its absence. The problem is not the silence itself. The problem is what we tell ourselves about the silence. If you tell yourself, this is awkward, it becomes awkward. But if you tell yourself, we are both just thinking, everything stays warm. And the simplest way to move through a silence naturally is to use one of these phrases. So, and you let the other person finish the thought. Or, that reminds me of something. Or simply, tell me more about that. These phrases do not feel like panic. They feel like genuine interest. And that is exactly what they are. A great conversation is not an interview. It is an exchange. And after you have asked about the other person, they will often want to know about you. Here are the phrases that allow you to share yourself naturally, warmly, and in a way that invites further conversation. Notice that each of these phrases begins with what we might call a bridge, a connection between what the other person said and your own experience. I can completely relate to that. That's so funny you say that. These bridges are essential. Without them, sharing your own experience can feel like you are changing the subject or hijacking the conversation. With them, it feels like genuine exchange, like two people building something together. I can completely relate to that. Actually, I went through something very similar a couple of years ago, and it changed everything about how I think about it. Now, at normal speed, I can completely relate to that. Actually, I went through something very similar a couple of years ago, and it changed everything about how I think about it. That is so funny you say that, because I was only thinking about this exact thing last week. I have been going back and forth about it for months. Let's try it at a natural pace. That's so funny you say that, because I was only thinking about this exact thing last week. I've been going back and forth about it for months. Go back and forth is an idiomatic expression that means to keep changing your mind or to be unable to settle on a decision. I have been going back and forth about it means I keep thinking about it from different angles and I cannot quite decide. It signals that you are still actively thinking, still genuinely engaged, which is far more interesting in a conversation than having all the answers. Honestly, that is one of my favorite questions. I could talk about this for hours. Do you really want to know? Once more naturally. Honestly, that's one of my favorite questions. I could talk about this for hours. Do you really want to know? I have a slightly unconventional take on this. If you want to hear it, I am not sure everyone agrees with me, but I find it is a useful way to think about it. Now at a conversational pace. I have a slightly unconventional take on this. If you want to hear it, I'm not sure everyone agrees with me, but I find it's a useful way to think about it. That is actually something I am still figuring out. I feel like every time I think I understand it, something changes my mind again. Let's hear it naturally. That's actually something I'm still figuring out. I feel like every time I think I understand it, something changes my mind again. And I want to say something about that phrase before we move on, because it models something very important. It shows intellectual honesty. The willingness to say, I do not have all the answers yet. In English conversation, particularly in the United States and the United Kingdom, this kind of openness is far more attractive than false certainty. People who say, I am still figuring it out, are far more interesting to talk to than people who pretend they have everything resolved. Uncertainty invites conversation. Certainty closes it down. Now let's hear a complete conversation from the very first word to the natural conclusion. Notice how the opener leads to follow-up questions, which lead to genuine sharing, which creates the feeling of real connection. You are at a professional networking event. You notice someone standing slightly to the side, looking at their phone. You approach and say, I have a theory that everyone at these events spends at least the first 15 minutes looking at their phone so they do not have to stand alone. Am I wrong? The person laughs and puts their phone away. You are absolutely not wrong. I have read the same 3 emails approximately 20 times in the last 10 minutes. I am James, by the way. You say, I am Elena. Is this your first time at one of these? Or are you a regular? James says, 3rd time. I keep telling myself I am going to be better at networking, and then I arrive and immediately find the nearest wall. What about you? You say, 1st time, which means I have no excuse for the phone behavior. I think I was just buying myself a moment of courage. What do you do? James, what brings you to one of these? James says, I work in tech, on the product side. I am trying to meet more people outside my immediate industry. What I have realized is that the most interesting ideas tend to come from unexpected places. And you? You say, I am in education, actually, English language learning specifically. So I find the question of how people communicate and connect genuinely fascinating, which is ironic, given that I just spent 10 minutes avoiding communicating with anyone. James laughs warmly and says, I think that makes you the most self-aware person in this room. English language learning, though, that is genuinely interesting. How did you end up in that field? You say, that is a long and slightly winding story, But the short version is that I grew up speaking 2 languages, and I became fascinated by the moment when a language stops being foreign and starts being yours. I wanted to help people reach that moment faster. James says, "That is a beautiful way to describe it. I feel like I could listen to you talk about this for a long time," which I think means this is probably the most successful networking conversation I have had at one of these events. You smile and say, "And all it took was 2 people admitting they were hiding behind their phones." I think there is a lesson in there somewhere. Now shadow the key lines at natural speed. I have a theory that everyone at these events spends at least the first 15 minutes looking at their phone so they don't have to stand alone. Am I wrong? You are absolutely not wrong. I've read the same 3 emails approximately 20 times in the last 10 minutes. I'm James, by the way. First time, which means I have no excuse for the phone behavior. I think I was just buying myself a moment of courage. What do you do? James, what brings you to one of these? I'm in education. Actually, English language learning specifically. So I find the question of how people communicate and connect genuinely fascinating, which is ironic, given that I just spent 10 minutes avoiding communicating with anyone. That's a long and slightly winding story. But the short version is that I grew up speaking 2 languages, and I became fascinated by the moment when a language stops being foreign and starts being yours. I wanted to help people reach that moment faster, and all it took was 2 people admitting they were hiding behind their phones. I think there's a lesson in there somewhere. Shadow every line of this conversation slowly, and then at natural speed. Notice the honest and slightly self-deprecating opener. Notice the warm and immediate follow-up question. Notice how the conversation moved from the shared situation to professional context to something genuinely personal and meaningful. Notice also how Elena introduced herself. She did not open with her name. She opened with a human observation and only gave her name once there was already a connection, once the other person had laughed and lowered their guard and become someone worth introducing yourself to. That is exactly how native speakers do it in social and professional settings. The introduction comes when it feels earned, not as a formal announcement at the start. And notice how natural and unscripted the whole thing felt. That is the goal. Not perfect English, natural, warm, genuinely curious English. That is what starts conversations, and that is what keeps them going. Before we close today's lesson, I want to invite you into a moment of genuine and honest personal reflection. Everything we have practiced today only becomes real when it connects to your actual life, your actual situations, and your actual courage. So I am going to give you 6 sentence starters and reflection questions. Take your time with each one. Answer as honestly and as specifically as you can. And if you can, try to answer in English. Sentence 1. The situation where I find it hardest to start a conversation in English is: think about where the anxiety is greatest for you. Is it with strangers? At work? At social events? Online? Knowing your specific challenge helps you target your practice. Now choose one phrase from today's lesson that speaks directly to that situation. That is your phrase for this week. Sentence 2. The last time I wanted to start a conversation in English and did not, I was in. Revisit that moment. What stopped you? What would you say now with the phrases you have today? Imagine it going well. Run that version through your mind. Sentence 3. A conversation I want to start this week is: make it specific. Not just a conversation with someone, a specific person in a specific situation, using a specific phrase from today's lesson. Name all three, right now. Sentence 4. The phrase from today that feels most natural to me is, choose the one that sounds most like you, the one you can imagine yourself actually saying. That is the one to practice first, because confidence always follows familiarity. Sentence 5. What I am most afraid of when starting a conversation in English is, name the fear directly. The fear of silence, the fear of running out of things to say, the fear of being judged. Naming it is the first step to moving through it. And then ask yourself this: what is the worst realistic thing that could actually happen, and how quickly would it pass? Sentence 6. The kind of connection I most want to create through English is, what are you really reaching for? Professional relationships? Deep friendships? A sense of belonging in an English-speaking community? Hold that vision clearly. Let it be your reason. Let it pull you forward. And I want to add one more thing here. One more question that is perhaps the most important of all. Think about what it would feel like to walk into a room next week, any room, and feel genuinely ready to talk to the people in it. Not performing, not rehearsing, not waiting for someone to talk to you first, but actually ready, actually willing, carrying the words and the confidence and the belief that you are someone worth talking to. Because you are. You have always been. The English was simply the part that was missing. And today, you filled it in. Now say your answers out loud, in English, if you can. Do not just think them. Speak them. Your voice needs to practice this too. Because the moment your answer leaves your mouth, it stops being just a thought and starts becoming something real. Something you are actually going to do. We have covered extraordinary and deeply practical ground together today. Let me honor everything you have done in this lesson. You have learned why starting conversations in English feels so hard, and why that difficulty is completely understandable and completely solvable. You have learned how native speakers think about starting conversations, and discovered that connection always comes before language. You have learned how to start conversations with strangers in everyday situations, using the shared environment as your natural starting point. You have learned how to start conversations at work, with colleagues and senior professionals, with confidence and appropriate warmth. You have learned how to start conversations at social events and parties, using the 3 most powerful and reliable openers that native speakers actually use. You have learned how to start conversations online and in written messages, with the specificity and genuine interest that makes people want to respond. You have learned what to do when a conversation does not go as planned, how to exit gracefully and leave everyone feeling good. And you have learned how to keep a conversation going after you start it, through the simple but transformative practice of genuine curiosity and real follow-up questions. These are not small skills. These are the skills that will fill your life in English with the connections, the relationships, the opportunities, and the sense of belonging that you have been reaching for. Every conversation you have ever had that mattered began with someone starting it, and now that person can be you. I want you to think for a moment about what happens when you do not start the conversation. The person you could have met, you never meet. The opportunity that could have come from a single warm exchange in a corridor never comes. The friendship that could have changed everything never begins. Not because you are not worthy of it, not because you are not interesting or funny or intelligent or warm, but because the words were not there in the moment when you needed them. Today, you changed that. The words are there now, and that changes everything that comes after. The only thing between you and a richer, more connected English-speaking life is the willingness to open your mouth and say the first word. And you have those words now. You have practiced them. You have felt what they sound like. The only thing left is to use them. The next time you are standing in a line, or sitting in a coffee shop, or arriving at a work event, or entering a party, I want you to look around you for one moment. Look for the shared environment. Look for the thing that both of you can see, or are experiencing, or are reacting to. And then say something about it. Warmly, honestly, without trying to be perfect. Just trying to be real. Because real is what connects us. Perfect never does. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with a mantra, a series of truths to carry with you into every situation where a conversation is waiting to begin. Take a breath and repeat after me. I have the words to start a conversation in English in any situation. Take another breath and say it again with complete conviction. I have the words to start a conversation in English in any situation. Shadow this next truth. Every conversation I start makes the next one easier. Every connection I create makes my world larger. Take a breath and repeat. Every conversation I start makes the next one easier. Every connection I create makes my world larger. Try this one with everything you have. I do not need to be perfect to connect. I just need to be genuine, and genuine is something I already am. Say it again and really feel it. I do not need to be perfect to connect. I just need to be genuine. And genuine is something I already am. Shadow this truth with full presence. Starting a conversation is an act of courage, and I am capable of courage. I prove it every time I speak. One more time. Starting a conversation is an act of courage, and I am capable of courage. I prove it every time I speak. And finally, the most important one, say it slowly. Let every single word matter. I reach out. I connect. I belong. In English and in every room I walk into. Take a long, deep breath and say it one final time. I reach out. I connect. I belong. In English and in every room I walk into. Thank you from the very bottom of my heart for spending this time with me today, for showing up, for being willing to practice not just the language, but the courage that the language requires. That takes something real, and I see it in you. Go out into your life and start conversations in coffee shops and offices and parties and online with strangers and colleagues and potential friends and people who might change your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. The world is full of people who are waiting for someone to say the first word. And now That someone is you. Until next time, take gentle and loving care of yourselves. Be brave in the first moment of every conversation, and always remember this: every great friendship, every meaningful collaboration, every life-changing connection began with someone choosing to speak. And now, you have the words to be that someone. Goodbye for now, and I will see you in tomorrow's lesson.